Peak performers are ordinary people who found ways to make a major impact. Peak performers aren't rare and remote individuals who miraculously achieve far beyond the norm, but people who are setting a new norm, a kind of person we can all be. Peak performers are motivated toward results by a personal mission. They possess the twin capacities of self-management and team mastery, and they have the ability to correct course and manage change. One evening, as we strolled outside Grumman headquarters, he answered, "I've been a piece of furniture in my job for years. Do you know what it's like working 40 to 60 hours a week and not knowing whether your work makes a darn bit of difference to anybody? Now look at that." He pointed to the moon, barely visible in the eastern sky. "People have been dreaming about going there for thousands of years, and we're going to do it. You want to know why we're doing so well? Want to know my secret? I've got a mission, something that matters to me, something that matters to all of us. We finally have something we can sink our teeth into and be proud of." Peak performance begins with a commitment to a mission. Samuel Johnson said, "When a man knows he's to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully." Most people live, whether physically, intellectually, or morally, in a very restricted circle of their potential being. They make use of a very small portion of their possible consciousness, of their soul's resources in general, much like a man who, out of his whole bodily organism, should get into the habit of using and moving only his little finger. Great emergencies and crises show us how much greater our vital resources are than we had supposed. The primary locus of control for a peak performer isn't external, but internal. 6 common attributes of peak performers are missions that motivate, the call to action, the click that starts things moving, results in real time, purposeful activity directed at achieving goals that contribute to a mission, self-management through self-mastery, the capacity for self-observation and effective thinking, team building / team playing, the complement to self-management, empowering others to produce, course correction, mental agility, concentration, finding and navigating a critical path, change management, anticipating and adapting to major change while maintaining momentum and balance within an overall game plan. Peak performers demonstrated superior awareness of the full range of factors determining the difference between what they could change or adapt to and what they couldn't. Employees who look for direction every time they have to make a move are a hindrance to their organizations and themselves. The rising stars are those individuals who can align their own missions with an organization's mission, keep their motivation refreshed by achievement, aim for results, and manage themselves. Self-confidence means being willing to go out and hear no, and move on to focus on the next opportunity. Bimodal thinking combines macro and micro forms of attention. Analyzing problem situations within a company requires the overall macro view. Applying specific solutions requires its complement, the detailed micro view. And mental rehearsal, or as Hall calls it, self-talk, he uses that self-talk to prepare himself for a meeting, to prepare in advance his approach, his presentation, and the results he wants. Depending on the stage of a negotiation, he envisions specific actions, such as a handshake, or an agreement to proceed, or a signed contract. If I come back in 2 or 3 years, what will I find? He said, You won't be telling us about peak performance. You'll be studying us as a case history of a peak performing team that made it. Jim Gray, a telephone company lineman, became a supervisor and learned to anticipate, adapt, and act. Peak performers aren't people with something added. Rather, they're people with very little of their potential taken away. More than any other factor, the difference between them and ordinary performers is that they conscientiously, persistently, and intelligently refine and develop those characteristics. Victor Khayyam asked, "What's really important in life? Sitting on the beach, looking at a television 8 hours a day?" I think we have to appreciate that we're alive for only a limited period of time, and we'll spend most of our lives working. That being the case, I believe one of the most important priorities is to do whatever we do as well as we can. We should take pride in that. Aldous Huxley said, "Experience is not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you." The most intriguing quality of peak performers is that no matter how rough it gets, how much of an assault on mind and body, they always feel that they can do something about it. Another intriguing quality of peak performers is their constructive restlessness. Everyone else may be moping around. The peak performers can be found exploring possible solutions, something that might work, or something else. They always have another idea to test, an extra possibility to explore. Peak performers never stop seeking and learning. Among them, we see mostly high initiative, energetic individuals. Psychologist Richard DeCharms wrote about origins and pawns. An origin is a person who feels that he's the director of his life. He feels that what he's doing is the result of his own free choice. He's doing it because he wants to do it, and the consequences of his activity will be valuable to him. He thinks carefully about what he wants in the world now and in the future, and chooses the most important goals, ruling out those that are too easy or too risky. A pawn is a person who feels that what he's doing has been imposed on him by others, that he's doing it because he's forced to, and the consequences of his activity will not be a source of pride to him. Since he feels that external factors determine his fate, the pawn does not consider carefully his goals in life, nor does he concern himself about what he himself can do to further his cause. Peak performers see their potential emerging, not only when something's added, but especially when nothing's taken away. A 55-year-old vice president of operations for an aerospace company summed up the characteristics presented in this book as not additional capabilities tacked on to plain old me, but strategies to prevent the taking away of parts of my potential, my essential ability to achieve and improve. We distilled 4 main ingredients of the potential peak performers have managed to mobilize: inherent talents, acquired information, restlessness, passion, and preference. One can either identify and develop the specific talents and capabilities he or she has, or leave them buried. People often don't act in their own best interests, even when they possess the knowledge they need. Acquired information, like inherent talent, may lie dormant until a peak performer develops an action plan and a compelling reason for using it. A baby in action who's curious, energetic, reaching out to explore, embodies the inborn urge to grow, to achieve, to excel. This motivation need not be taught. It can be untaught, as suffocating organizations and limiting jobs demonstrate in squelching people's motivation. Preference with a passion, intense commitment to what they do, is one of the single most dramatic differences between peak performers and their less productive colleagues. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "Every calling is great when greatly pursued." Lee Iacocca recalled Coach Vince Lombardi saying, "Every time a football player goes out to apply his trade, he's got to play from the ground up, from the soles of his feet right up to his head. Every inch of him has to play. Some guys play with their heads, and sure, you need to be smart to be number one in anything you try. But most important, you've got to play with your heart. If you're lucky enough to find a guy with a lot of head and a lot of heart, he's never going to come off the field second." Peak performers start with potential. We all do. Yet history's littered with the bones of people who never converted potential into achievement. Inherent talents turn useful only when you examine what yours are and cultivate them. George Leonard shared his assessment of Abraham Maslow's work. The tendency of every human being to make real his or her full potential, to become everything that he or she can be. The self-actualizing person is the true human species type. Not a normal person with something added, but a normal person with nothing taken away. The fact is, the differences between peak performers and everybody else are much smaller than everybody else thinks. Do we have to wait for an Apollo mission to come along? No. The high achievers in American business are identifying their own missions, charting their own critical paths to peak performance. The one characteristic that appears in every peak performer that I've studied is a sense of mission. Mission is the source of peak performance. Mission is an image of a desired state of affairs that inspires action. Mission determines behavior and fuels motivation. Management theorist Chester Bernard said, "Strictly speaking, purpose is defined more accurately by the action taken than by any formulation in words." More than their less productive peers, peak performers understand that people can change dramatically, and they train themselves for impressive increases in performance. Their method is simple to understand. It consists of sustained effort and commitment to a personally compelling mission. A peak performer lives a dual life, wanting both the rewards of uniqueness and the pride of belonging to a good family, a winning team, a strong country, a successful planet. Peak performers say things like, "I'm attracted to unsolved problems, to the unknown. Nothing makes me feel better than good workmanship. I'm fighting not because I'm hostile, but because I want to see this thing turn out right. It's a pity for talent to be wasted." They did what others can learn to do. They saw beyond the probable by envisioning the possible, that being a state of affairs that they desired to bring about and believed in. By acting on their view of the possible with a clear sense of purpose, they created a work environment in which other people could share their commitment and in which commitment was the norm, not the exception. Peak performers take the time to assess their actions and their motives, setting aside the non-essential until they isolate the mission, the essence of their commitment that will sustain them through the roughest times. Everyone, either in his career or as a part-time activity, should be doing something about which he cares deeply. The first move one makes in constructing a powerful mission is exercising vision. You see something you want so passionately that it calls forth your wholehearted commitment. A second essential move is phrasing a mission statement, translating the vision into language that inspires yourself and others. Great accomplishments are always the result of imagination translated through words and action plans. Whether they're focusing on family, developing talents, or getting to the top of a particular field, peak performers refine their capacity to see clearly what they want and to state it in terms that motivate. For instance, he said, there's a group here that puzzles me. They maintain the pipes in our thermodynamics plant, checking temperatures and pressures. The situation makes me nervous. On the one hand, the enormous cost of the parts we test and the delicacy of the equipment means the pipes have to work within strict tolerances or there'll be expensive damage. On the other hand, the work is mechanical and repetitive. Essentially, it's plumbing. And it seems impossible to me that anybody would find it even interesting, much less an occasion for peak performance. But here's the surprise. This group's attendance record, it's terrific. They have the lowest turnover in the entire company. Their motivation's obviously high. Their productivity and performance are excellent. How come? I went to visit Sam Harrison, the foreman. He gave me a tour. At one point, I asked why all his people wore green surgical smocks. "Oh, you noticed," Harrison said. "I got them from my son. He's a cardiovascular surgeon. He got them so I could give them to the gang." "Ah," I said, "you wear them for comfort?" No, Harrison said. "It's because we're surgeons, just like my son. He takes care of pipes in the body. If you're worried about a heart attack, my son works on your arteries. We take care of the pipes in this plant. It isn't going to have any breakdowns as long as we're working on its arteries. We take care of these pipes the way a doctor takes care of your heart." Sure enough, the stencils on their locker doors said doctor, and Sam used the title with a grin as he introduced his colleagues. Their statement of their mission, take care of these pipes in a way a doctor takes care of your heart, matched its importance to the organization. The way they spoke to one another, the mixed humor and pride with which they used surgery as their metaphor, helped them to share the special value that their work had for them. The meaning they constructed wasn't an illusion. They had devised a way to keep themselves at a peak of performance in a job that offered little glamour or daily stimulation, and their entire company shared the benefits. Entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs are the new stars. These are the people who refuse to be cowed by the old image of the organization crushing the life out of its employees. Instead, they see the organization and its members creating life together. Alignment is the key to standing out while standing in. Alignment occurs when individuals perceive that contributing to an organization produces direct contributions to their personal mission. At 3M, it's company policy to measure the results of innovation and actually to require it. At least 25% of sales in every 3M division each year must come from products introduced within the last 5 years. Toward that end, employees can spend 15% of their office time on independent projects. This is a story often told, but like a legend, it bears retelling. Arthur Fry, a 3M chemical engineer, knew that Spencer Silver, a scientist there, had accidentally discovered an adhesive with very low sticking power. Normally, that would be bad. For Fry, musing about it on company time, it was good. Pieces of paper he used to mark his place in his church hymnal always fell out when he stood up to sing, and that annoyed him. He figured that The markers with a strip of adhesive on the back would stick lightly to something and would come off easily. He made some samples, gave them to secretaries to try out, and 3M eventually began selling his little yellow pads under the name Post-it. Sales in 1984 topped $100 million. We're likely to find that the source of excellence is peak performers who never assume that they're powerless. Even in organizations that others perceive as hopelessly complex and unresponsive, the performers retain a sense that they control their own actions. The most productive team is the one in which every individual is important, and in which every individual is at the same time committed to the common mission of the team. Peak performers create their own missions. They do it by first determining what they truly care about, then devoting themselves to that pursuit. In creating workable missions, there are guideposts. Some of the predictors of success that I've seen repeatedly are putting preference before expertise, drawing on the past, trusting intuition, having no preconceived limitations, combining profit with contribution, and being pulled by values. Malcolm Forbes Sr. of Forbes magazine has said, "Part of growing up is realizing that you don't need expertise. You just need to want to, and then do it. Enthusiasm, not expertise, is the requisite." Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari, points out, "Everyone who's ever taken a shower has had an idea. It's the person who gets out of the shower, dries off, and does something about it who makes a difference." Mission starts with determining what you really care about and want to accomplish and committing yourself to it. You can always develop expertise. First, discover your preference. Peak performers are adept in the art of replay. They mentally review their past successes and analyze what worked in times past to overcome obstacles, both personal and organizational. An intuitive feel for the way something fits, for its natural rightness, accelerates the creation of a mission that has power and workability. Peak performers consistently maintain their conviction of their mission's value and their ability. In even the darkest moments, they remain optimistic. They persevere. Mission is bound by no preconceived limitations. It inspires people to reach out for what could be and to rise above their fears and preoccupations with what is. How can we possibly tell our own people that they matter to us if we encourage them to cut corners on food that our customers buy for nourishment? James Roush said, "Man is God's instrument for carrying out the ongoing creation. That means everything we do in the environment, what we build or fail to build, places a tremendous responsibility on us and a tremendous opportunity." The sustaining source of mission is what you care about most. Do peak performers always have a mission? No. But when they don't, they make finding a mission their mission. To produce great results, vision must exist and be communicated. Mission establishes the territory and sets a direction in which one can be impassioned, committed, and empowered for the long haul. Mission opens up a direction for growth as well as for achievement. Mission sets up an individual to act in his or her own behalf and to do it in the direction of progress. Peak performers don't rely on being pumped up from some state of undermotivation. They're drawn to the peak of their abilities by the best of motivators, that internal decision to excel in the service of a compelling mission. Once launched, compelling missions lead to results. Peak performers are people who approach any set of circumstances with the attitude that they can get it to turn out the way they want it to. Not once in a while, but regularly. Peak performers organize their actions around results by envisioning and communicating a clear mission, following up with a plan of action that includes specific goals, complete with the benchmarks necessary for assessing timing, quality, and quantity of results. The motivation, the drive that keeps you on track and ultimately produces results comes from focusing on the destination, an endpoint which you keep in sight, and from seeing yourself move through the process in the various stages of setting and attaining goals. Much of Margaret Chesney's impact is achieved by making sure that other people perceive her goals as worthy. A sign in Coach Tom Landry's Dallas Cowboy locker room read, "The value of a man's life is in direct proportion to his commitment to excellence." Peak performers are frequently leaders not because they care so much for the trappings of dominance, but because they care so much for results. An individual peak performer's bottom line, however, takes just one form, and that's to make things happen toward goals consistent with a mission while developing oneself in the process. For the peak performers, skills translate as competence, pride, confidence, and personal power because they're motivated to use the skills to accomplish personally meaningful results. People who are at the tops in their fields are always looking out for new information in their field to maintain their competitive edge. Peak performers separate action that produces useful results in real time from mere activity or busy work. People aren't born to an action, they learn it. Peak performers maintain high standards for their work while staying free from the paralyzing compulsion to be perfect. A secret goal can't benefit from the participation and force of others. A well-defined goal, shared with others and sparked with enthusiasm, will draw energy and forces that can't be measured or suppressed. Concentrating the energies of others on a project you care about is one of the most useful skills a peak performer can develop. Threats, a time-honored way of maintaining control in the frantic authoritarian clamor of every big commercial kitchen, were out. Humor, she found, worked better, and so did patience. We see that some of the most impressive innovators in organizations today are those who seek ways to combine their work and its momentum with the work of others. Peak performers handle both macro and micro, which means using both overall and detail. Marilis Casto started calling every client after the trip to ask if there was anything she could have done to make it work better. Practically all of the men and women in our study who produce valuable results for themselves and their companies have proven themselves adept not only at keeping up with change, but also at anticipating future change. A strong characteristic among them is that they can envision accomplishments beyond their immediate frame of reference. They see past the formal boundaries of their jobs, past traditional ways of doing things. They're flexible, active, creative, growth-oriented, in a word, innovative. Their qualities give them the ability to see opportunities before they become obvious. Peak performers use both innovation and consolidation to achieve a balance that gets results. The great quarterback's a peak performer because he's learned to go deep into his specialty by competing with himself, by bettering his own past performance through disciplined practice, by obsessively paying attention to detail, and by having the resilience and staying power to acquire experience. Peak performers move in pursuit of an opportunity. Innovators, the people who start businesses or make major contributions within companies, as peak performers frequently do, often make their moves without all the resources in place and make imaginative use of what they do have. Being busy often passes for being productive. Putting in the hours is necessary to achieve peak performance, but working smart produces more results than merely working long or appearing to work long. The business world is full of goal-directed individuals who aren't sure why they do what they do. The peak performers in our study move toward success, not away from failure. When high achievers get less than the results they planned for and work toward, they allow the normal human feelings of disappointment, anger, or fatigue to pass, and then they start analyzing. They search for information in the situation. Where are we now? What went wrong? Why? Where are we headed? How do we get there? Peak performers often have the disposition to see themselves as the originator of actions in their life. They view events in life as opportunities for taking action and see themselves as the agents who must precipitate such actions. The lifeblood of an excellent organization is to have self-managers at all levels. Self-confidence stems from the feeling and the evidence to back it up, that you know what you're doing and do it well. You can see the arguments for and against any decision, but you don't hesitate to make the decision and live with it. The one element that stands out most clearly among our peak performers is their virtually unassailable belief in their likelihood of their own success, and their track records reinforce their beliefs. People with the twin attributes of self-confidence and effectiveness put into practice the 6 major attributes we found in interviewing peak performers. They plan and act consistently, guided by their mission. They get results. They take initiative and manage themselves. They build teams and motivate other people. They correct course to stay on track. And they manage change to maintain peak performance. In reference to the subject of mental rehearsal, peak performers, particularly in business, sports, and the arts, report a highly developed ability to imprint images of successful actions in their mind. They mentally practice specific skills and behaviors leading to those outcomes and achievements which they ultimately attain. A source of confidence for peak performers is ego strength. That's the confidence to ask questions about their own performance and to act on the answers that are sometimes difficult, and it emerges from an attribute that psychologists call ego strength. Andrew Grove illustrates a practical application of ego strength by describing high-achieving employees at Intel as micro CEOs. The ability to take charge, to be effective in any surroundings, shows executive capability that stems from the deepest kind of personal authority. No matter where he or she is in the organization, the micro CEO possessing a strong ego feels self-authorized to perceive things accurately and make effective decisions. They have an internal executive sense that translates as self-confidence and self-esteem, poise under pressure, the ability to learn from others and manage change effectively. People with such ego strength contrast markedly with people who are said to have big egos.